The first submarine arrived in Pakistan in the month of April. Another 3 are expected by 2028. Reports say China could be looking at delivering 1 submarine to Pakistan every year. Plus, there are upgrades in the pipeline. Pakistan plans to add a total of 50 new ships by the next decade. Out of these, 20 will be major warships. Now, most of these will be supplied by China, but there are 2 other suppliers in the mix, Turkey and Romania. Pakistan has expressed willingness to acquire some vessels from them as well. Again, the question is, where is the money coming from? Who is going to foot the bill for this? Islamabad certainly cannot afford a naval expansion. The government is struggling to balance its finances. There is a $2.5 billion gap in the budget. Last month, a team from the IMF traveled to Islamabad, the International Monetary Fund. They traveled to discuss the funding shortfall. Remember, Pakistan is part of an IMF bailout program. The country has been bailed out for a record 23 times by the IMF. That's the highest for any country. And guess what? They've already filed another bailout request. They're asking for bailout number 24. So clearly, a naval expansion seems impractical. But this is Pakistan. The army is likely to have its way. Despite its financial troubles, Pakistan's military never faces budget constraints. It doesn't matter who's in power. Rawalpindi always gets a blank check. Take this year, for instance. Pakistan's budget for defense was hiked by nearly 15%. I'll repeat that. The budget was hiked, defense budget, by 15%. So India cannot afford to take this lightly. It must prepare to counter Pakistan on the high seas. The Indian Navy has its own expansion plan in the works. It wants to get 6 new nuclear-powered subs. The government has already approved plans to build 2 of them. Additionally, plans are also in place to get new fighter jets for the Navy.
62 ships and 1 submarine is under construction in various DPSUs, PSUs, and private shipyards in the country. And there is an acceptance of necessity for 31 more ships and submarines.
India's next major military challenge is likely to emerge from the high seas. This threat has been brewing for some time now. China is intensifying pressure campaigns. Its military vessels and spy ships are encroaching on waters near India's borders. Now, Beijing has taken this campaign a step further. It is arming Pakistan to open another front against India. The strategy is quite clear: to create a 2-pronged maritime threat. India's upcoming naval upgrades are much needed to counter this rising challenge. Our next story is from Belgium. It has approved a new labor law for its sex workers. It gives them a lot of employment rights. They have access to health care now. They can take maternity leave and they will get pensions. They can terminate their contract anytime they want. They can refuse sexual acts. This law is a first in the world, the first of its kind. It sets a precedent for other countries. In 78 nations across the globe, sex work is legal or partially legal, yet there are no protections for these people. Will this new law by Belgium change that? Our next report tells you.
It's a first in the world. Belgium has approved new laws for its sex workers. It will give them health insurance, pensions, family benefits, holidays, and more importantly, maternity leave. Essentially, rights that are equal to any other job in the world. In 2022, Belgium became the first country to decriminalize self-employed sex work. It was prompted by mass protests. The COVID-19 pandemic left sex workers without jobs and they were struggling for state support. Belgium has now moved to change that. The law went into effect on Sunday. It gives sex workers employment contracts and the perks that come with it. Not just that, sex workers can now refuse any client. They can also refuse any sexual act. They can also interrupt a sexual act at any time without fear of dismissal or punishment. And the onus now falls on employers. They must ensure the premises are clean. Rooms are equipped with panic buttons and there is access to showers and condoms. If the workers are not comfortable, they can press the panic button. Any employer convicted of a serious crime cannot employ any sex worker.
terwijl ze eigenlijk niet echt iets
I
hebben.
think the benefits of the new law now are that it is easier to get a loan from the bank. It is also easier to get insurance and pension. That will be better for us. And if you are sick, you will also get an allowance.
Plus, the employment benefits are not tied to contracts. If a worker wants to leave the job, they can do so. They will still receive benefits like health insurance and unemployment benefits. This is a crucial step towards their economic freedom. All of this is also anonymous. That way, they can apply to any other job without the fear of discrimination. Prostitution is legal or partially legal in 78 countries across the globe, like Germany, Greece, the Netherlands, and Turkey. There are millions of sex workers globally, but when it comes to protections, there are few. Legalizing prostitution was about making it safe. It was about giving workers access to healthcare and access to equal rights. Instead, it turned into a massive industry, one that generates millions in taxes but does little for the workers. And this is the case in places where it's legal. So imagine what it's like in countries where it's not legal. Sex work exists there too, except it escapes legal scrutiny. Governments turn a blind eye, and paying the price are millions of workers. It leaves them susceptible to violence and exploitation with no access to safety or support. Belgium wants to change that with this new law, and it's setting a global precedent. Sex work exists in every corner of the world despite stigmas and legal barriers. This new law challenges the stereotypes and acknowledges a simple truth. Sex work is work, and sex workers deserve the same rights as any other worker. Fair wages, safe conditions, and protection from harassment. By granting these rights, Belgium takes a bold step towards equality, regardless of the moral judgments that people may have.
Many of you will be familiar with parental pressure. When you're young, you're at the receiving end. In school, it's about getting good grades. In your early 20s, it's about your career, getting a good job and career growth.